Hello everyone, you're watching a brand new episode of Mega Projects with me, Simon Whistler, and in this one today, Crossrail. I used to live in London. This is basically that giant railway that they're building under London. It's a pretty cool idea, so let's just dive into it, shall we? London, this magnificent, enigmatic, perhaps a little cloudy, absolutely can attest to that, the weather in London does kind of suck, city is pushing forward once again. A city where the old and new mingle freely, a city with an old tower that has stood for nearly 1,000 years, and a new tower just 7 years old, reaching imperiously skyward. Samuel Johnson was right. When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. I'll just comment here. I lived in London, like I said, for about a year, and I didn't get tired of it, but it is a really big and busy city. This has always been a city of construction and projects. London has been built and rebuilt time and time again, often right over preceding layers. When we think of London, we think of palaces, of great sprawling parks, and perhaps even a slightly goofy yet lovable Hugh Grant selling books in Notting Hill.
Right.
But this is, and always has been, a city that has shouldered the burden of progress, leading where others follow. London is now nearing the end of a mammoth project long in the imagination, long overdue, and certainly far over budget. What a surprise. With a peak workforce of 10,000 people across 40 different sites, it was Europe's largest construction venture. But gazing across the city, you're never going to be able to see it. The London skyline has changed rapidly since the destruction that rained down upon it during the Blitz. While St Paul's Cathedral and the Tower of London still stand proudly, they have been joined by young upstarts like the Shard, once Europe's tallest building, and 30 St Mary's Axe, which you probably know as the Gherkin. But nothing has quite matched the Crossrail project in terms of cost, time, and ambition. The 73-mile, 117-kilometer rail line might not sound particularly impressive, but with its larger-than-normal twin tunnels burrowing for 13 miles at a depth of 40 meters under one of the most densely packed areas in Europe, you start to get a real idea of what has been happening out of sight since 2009. And that's something, just to add in here, that I really hope with this Mega Projects channel is that when everyone thinks of Mega Projects, they think of skyscrapers and dams and giant things which are visible, but I really hope on this channel in the future we can dive into, the things that are just slightly out of sight, like Crossrail. The line running between Reading, somewhere else I used to live, as another side note, in the west, to Abbey Wood and Shenfield in the east, cuts directly through central London, connecting many of the busiest stations in the city, in particular Paddington, Tottenham Court Road, Liverpool Street, Canary Wharf, and Stratford, while also connecting Heathrow Airport in southwest London. Crossrail will move passengers through London faster than ever before. Today, a journey between Paddington and Tottenham Court Road, a distance of just 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers, takes 20 minutes. When Crossrail is operational, this will be just 3 minutes. But this is also a mega project that has begun to be beset with issues. No surprises there. At an estimated cost of £18.25 billion, it is nearly £3 billion over budget and behind schedule by at least 2 years. That doesn't actually sound too bad. Though assurances have been made that the Elizabeth line, the central section of the project, will be open in 2021, Londoners have understandably begun to eye Crossrail with a bit of skepticism, alongside, of course, the anticipation. Like, it's going to be great when it's finally done. In 1863, residents and visitors to London were treated to a very new way of travelling. The world's first underground railway, known as the Metropolitan Railway, opened to the public on the 10th of January and ran between Paddington and Farringdon in an east-west direction. In total, 38,000 people used the service on the first day alone, while by the end of the year, that number had reached 9.5 million passengers. Despite the thick smoke of the locomotives that was said to enter every possible human body cavity, the Underground line, which took around 18 minutes from end to end, was an enormous success. And I think people in the past must have just been used to being dirtier, because I cannot imagine something so horribly dirty. And people would be thinking, yeah, this sounds really great, let's expand it massively. Just doesn't seem realistic. The London Underground system rapidly expanded from there. What began as a single line with 7 stations now includes 11 lines and 270 stations, stretching far outside the traditional boundaries of the city. But London wasn't alone. Mass underground railway systems have become common around the world. Currently, 178 cities across the planet whisk passengers through tunnels underground, with many more under construction. As our roads have become more and more congested, we have looked to tunneling underground as our best solution. But while newer underground systems run efficiently thanks to a more modern setup, the London Underground has suffered. Between 2016 and 2018, there were a total of 884 hours of delays caused by more than 4,000 signalling problems. The reasons for these are normally quite simple. It's a system that was once world-leading but is now basically archaic, and it's struggling badly with rapidly increasing numbers of people using it. If you've ever travelled on London's Central Line during rush hour, I have many times, you will know it's difficult to marvel at this engineering wonder while pressed tightly into the sweaty armpit of a fellow passenger. I absolutely hate this. I was in London last year with a friend of mine, and he's Spanish, and we took the London Underground to cross town, and it was so absolutely crammed, and it was so warm that he was like, "We're not doing that again." We took taxis from that point on. It was really expensive. On average, 5 million passengers use the London Underground each day, and I'd hazard a guess that at least half are on the Central Line during rush hour. It's probably true. Perhaps a slight exaggeration, but you get my point. With a population about to cross the 9 million mark, a substantial upgrade was needed. Definitely. If you don't know much about the London Underground, or the Tube as we call it, the Central Line runs east to west through the centre of the city. Crossrail has been designed to alleviate much of the pressure on this line, but also the Piccadilly and Jubilee lines. It is thought that when fully operational, it will boost the Tube's capacity by 10% and is forecast to raise £500 million in revenue in its first 2 years, a figure that should pass the £1 billion mark each year after that. While construction didn't begin until 2009, the idea for the Crossrail project has its roots much earlier. In 1941, with Britain locked in conflict during World War II, a railwayman by the name of George Dow penned a piece in the Star newspaper in which he discussed the benefits of an underground railway line running west to east under London as a way of alleviating pressure on the existing system. The idea was incorporated into several studies and plans during the war and the years that followed, but while many agreed it was a wonderful idea, with the country virtually bankrupt after the grueling war, the finance and political will, it just wasn't there. No surprises. In 1974, the term Crossrail appeared for the first time. Though the idea was still considered imaginative at this point, a London Rail study report estimated the cost at £300 million. It's a little way off today's number. But once again, things went quiet. The late 80s and 90s were times of plans, reports, and bills in Parliament regarding Crossrail. But it was one of many ideas floated to improve transportation within the capital. Things took off as we entered a new millennium, though, and by July 2008, the Crossrail Act had been granted royal assent, essentially green-lighting the project for the first time. A handy £1 billion was loaned from the European Investment Bank as the dream finally looked to be within touching distance. On the 15th of May 2009, piling work began at Canary Wharf Station, which started the slow process of laying a foundation deep below the surface. But this was an expansive project with multiple stages and countless locations that would either need to be constructed out of scratch or vastly upgraded. In total, 10 new stations needed to be built and 31 needed to be upgraded to accommodate the new service and the new trains, which I will be getting to shortly. And this is before we even start talking about the track and the tunnels. Boring began on the tunnels in May 2012 at a depth of 40 meters. For those interested in the vast beasts digging through the earth, bear with me here, we're going to get to those as well. Now, on the 4th of June 2013, boring work was completed as the final tunnel sections were joined at Farrington. There are in total 200,000 factory-built concrete segments that line the tunnels, with around 9,300 miles, that's 15,000 kilometers worth of cable to power the whole system. That's extraordinary. That's still about 600 miles short of travelling from London to Perth in Australia. By September 2017, track had been installed along the length of the line, so surely we must almost be there. Right? Well, yes, but also very much no. As of early 2020, most of the physical aspects of the project have been completed. Gleaming pictures from inside some of the finished stations show us how tantalizingly close we are. In 2018, a video showing a test train traveling through the tunnels appeared, but it quickly became apparent that despite the flying start the project had made, the end was still not in sight. Indeed, that was 2 years ago. There was a train running. There are still no trains running. Okay, so let's take a look at the work that was done underground. Firstly, remember that not all of Crossrail is underground. In fact, only 13 of the 73 miles dip below the surface. Of that, it's actually broken into 3 different tunnels, the longest of which runs for 9.6 miles, that's 15.39 kilometers from Royal Oak to Victoria Docks, crossing much of central London. 2 further tunnels lie in the southeast of the city, a 1.7 mile, 2.72 kilometer tunnel from Pudding Mill Lane to Stepney Green, and a 1.6 mile, 2.5 kilometer tunnel running from Plumstead to North Woolwich. And this, by the way, is the only tunnel that passes beneath the River Thames. But don't forget, these are twin tunnels. Imagine 2 tunnels, very close to each other, but completely separate. So to calculate the total length of tunnels dug, all of these distances need to be multiplied by 2. So how do we construct such tunnels? I mean, not me, personally, or us, unless you happen to work on the Crossrail project, in which case, thank you. Well, in short, with monstrous German engineering, of course. These tunnel boring machines, TBMs, are vast contraptions, weighing nearly 1,000 tons and stretching over 100 meters in length. They eat through the earth at a slow and steady rate of 10 meters, that's 35 feet a day. To accommodate much bigger trains, the TBMs used on Crossrail were significantly larger than anything that had dug under London before. As a comparison, the Victoria Line tunnels have a diameter of 3.81 meters, that's 12 feet 6 inches, while the Crossrail tunnels are almost twice the size at 6.2 meters or 20 feet and 4 inches. 8 TBMs were used on the project, but with 2 variations. A slurry version was used to dig the tunnel under the Thames in a ground rich in chalk, while the others used the slightly more formal-sounding earth pressure balancing machines for tunneling through clay, sand, and gravel. As per tradition, before any actual digging took place, they needed to be named. The nationwide contest was launched in January 2012, and they were all called Diggory McDiggerface. Not really, but that would have been, the best thing ever. A nationwide contest was launched in January 2012, in which 2,500 pairs of names were whittled down to a shortlist of 10, with a public vote then determining the final 4. The Royal Oak to Farringdon section was named Ada and Phyllis after Ada Lovelace, a brilliant mathematician and author, and Phyllis Isabella Pearsall, who founded the Geographer's A to Z Map Company, which had become hugely popular in London during the second half of the 20th century. The TBMs used on Limo Peninsula to Farringdon section were named Victoria and Elizabeth in honour of the Queens. The Plumstead to North Woolwich section became Mary and Sophia, wives of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, a hugely influential 19th century civil engineer and holder of the most badass middle name ever award. The Pudding Mill Lane to Stepney Green and Limo Peninsula to Victoria Dock sections were named Jessica and Ellie, after Jessica Ennis, a former track and field athlete, and Ellie Simmons, a British Paralympian swimmer. Now, the last point we want to mention on the tunnels, and this is something we never really think about, is, well, where does all the dirt go? And actually, I will just point out this is something I've thought about, because when they dug the Channel Tunnel, which will be coming up on this channel in the future, they took all the earth and put it somewhere in the south, and they made this new bit of reclaimed land into a park. I went there once with my nan when I was a kid, so I definitely did think about it. Well, in the case of Crossrail, a very eco-friendly use was found. Between 4.5 and 5 million tons of earth was transported 45 miles east to Walsey Islands on the River Roach, where a new 1,500-acre wetland nature reserve was created using the recycled earth. Now, this entire project doesn't really count for anything unless we have the trains running along with it. And this is another area where Crossrail will, eventually really stand out. At its peak and in the central section, there will be 24 trains running per hour, but this number will drop off as you get further out of London. Crossrail will use specially designed trains which can carry as many as 1,500 passengers each, considerably longer than anything that has ever run through London. On the Northern and Piccadilly lines, the trains today are about 108 metres, that's 354 feet in length, while the Victoria and Central Line trains are slightly larger at 133 metres or 436 feet. But Crossrail is going to blow them all out of the water with trains stretching for 205 metres, that's 672 feet. These large trains will enable 200 million passengers to use the service per year. A total of 70 9-car trains capable of running at 90 miles per hour, 140 kilometres per hour, have been built by Bombardier Transportation at a cost of just over £1 billion. Even before the delays to the opening, Crossrail has had its fair share of controversy. Accusations of bullying and intimidation during the purchase of homes and commercial buildings rumbled on, but without any real clear evidence. The project has also been accused of blacklisting certain companies and individuals, resulting in lawsuits brought against some of the companies involved. The most serious accident occurred on the 7th of March 2014 when Reni Takacic, a Slovakian construction worker, was killed when a ton of wet concrete was accidentally poured from above. As a result, Crossrail was fined £300,000 for failing to adhere to health and safety regulations. On March 29, 2012, a gantry on a building site in Westbourne Park collapsed, but there weren't any injuries. 3 workers died from suspected heart attacks over a period of 6 months in 2019, leading to an investigation into air quality, especially around Bond Street Station. After extensive testing, no substandard working conditions were found, and work resumed. Crossrail has come to be hailed as one of the most extensive archaeological studies ever seen in the UK. Across 40 sites and spanning 55 million years of history, this project has thrown up some fascinating discoveries, including medieval ice skates, a woolly mammoth jawbone, and Roman coins. But one dark aspect of London's history that most know but often don't consider are the countless mass graves that still sit beneath the surface. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been many plagues. Like any big city with a rich history, London has seen its fair share of tragedy, but concerns were raised about unearthing some things that we really don't want to ever see again. The plague and anthrax. And I actually made a video on another channel I do all about anthrax and how it can lay dormant for an insanely long time. So you think like, oh no, we're going to dig up some body from ages ago, it's going to be fine. Not if there's anthrax in there. Even before construction began, there were warnings that any finds would need to be tested carefully before proceeding. Lord James of Blackheath was the first to highlight that 682 victims of anthrax had been buried somewhere around Farringdon in 1520. During the construction of Crossrail, 55 skeletons have been found across 2 mass burial sites, but thankfully, after testing, no traces of anthrax or plague were ever found. In August 2018, it was officially announced that Crossrail would be delayed by 9 months to allow for further testing to take place. This has since been extended to 2021 at the earliest. But even when that date arrives, only part of the line is going to be fully operational. While we're not quite at the fiasco stage yet, patience is beginning to wear thin. As I said earlier, most of the building work has in fact been finished. What is taking vastly longer than anticipated is the testing and computer programming that must be created and installed. The software for signalling in particular seems to be one of the major holdups, along with issues at Bond Street and Whitechapel stations which have prevented complete safety tests from taking place. But we are close. When Crossrail is finally completed, it will stand as one of the most advanced underground lines anywhere in the world. At that stage, it's thought that Farringdon will become the busiest station in London, with around 140 trains passing through each hour. This is particularly poignant because Farringdon Station was one of the original 7 stations included on the world's first underground railway, which opened 157 years ago. It is here that London's fabled history and its ambitious future will really meet. This rickety system that paved the way of progress will once again stand tall. So, this has been Crossrail on the Mega Projects channel. I really hope you enjoyed it. I, as always, have been Simon. If you did like it, smash that like button below. If you didn't, well, you know what to do. Smash the dislike button. But you watched all the way to the end, so unless you just were hate watching it, I'd recommend a like. Subscribe, all of that good stuff. and I'll see you next time.